Housewives of Alaska.
And this is Marnell, and the moral of this story is all of the juicy bits are buried in the metro section.
I thought you were going to say the moral of the story is that there are no morals.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
So tonight we are talking about the 2015 movie Spotlight, which is actually a fictionalized account of the Boston Globe's investigative team breaking the sexual abuse scandal of the Catholic Church in Boston.
Mm-hmm. And subsequently around the world.
Right. So I'm going to say this was a great movie. I asked myself how I didn't know about this movie, and then I looked at the release date. The release date was November 6th, 2015. And I'm like, we just moved back into our house after it burned down, and I was suffering the effects of a traumatic brain injury. No wonder I didn't know about this movie.
Yeah, I think you're excused from missing this one. But I'm glad you got to watch it now. And I know I picked a serious, heavy subject matter, but...
Well, I was kind of picking on you last night. I was like, okay, no more religious stuff for a while.
Yeah, and so I did the Britney Spears one and the OnlyFans one, so I had to kind of go back down a little more serious. So
yeah, and I don't know what I'm going to choose, but I'm going to choose something not so serious for next week because this was great. Going Clear was great. I need something a little less serious. I don't know. Maybe we'll do the first episode of Rick and Morty. I don't know.
Talk about the socio-political impact of Rick.
Oh my god.
How Pickle Rick affects the stock market.
Oh my god, we are awful. All right. So is it my turn to do rating first, or is it your turn to do rating first?
I actually think it's my turn.
Okay.
So I rated it a 4.45 catechisms.
So not quite an A.
Not quite an A.
Okay.
It was really long, and it has the killer thing for me when it comes to books, movies, or TV shows. There was just too many cast members to keep track of. I'm like,
you and Steve.
Okay. The guy with the white hair. No. The other one. Is he a lawyer or a reporter? Who is he? What's going on? So I had a little trouble with that. I think they probably could have condensed it down a little more, but it already was really condensed. So yeah, I liked it though. So what did you rate it?
I gave it a solid A. I said 4.7 brave survivors out of 5.
Nice.
So I've got quite a few numbers. The budget for this film was $20 million. The box office was nearly $100 million.
Mm-hmm.
So it more than made its money back. There is a blog called Information is Beautiful, which looked at how accurate this movie was in terms of portraying the real story, and they rated it as 76.2% accurate. Which I was glad to see that number because I definitely, while I was watching this movie, thought, I wonder how much of this is really true to the story.
Yeah. I read when I first watched it. I read a little bit about it back when I first watched it, and found out that it was very, very close to the real story.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of knew that going into this, but yeah.
So I've got a couple more numbers. It had 6 Academy Award nominations, and it actually won 2 awards, Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
And the Metacritic number for it is 93 or 93%.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good movie.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I really, as much as I kind of griped about, oh God, such a serious movie, it's killing me. I'm glad that we watched it.
Well, and so we'll talk more about it, a little more about it later. But one of the things that I really, really liked about this movie is they did not focus in on the gory details of the scandal itself. It was really, really how the story was put together and everything that went into the investigation. And yeah, it's one of the reasons why I picked this movie is because I just think that journalism is so important.
Well, and you said that to me last night when we talked, and I was actually very glad that you said it and reframed it like that because I didn't really think of it from that perspective, and that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think of it as the pedophile priest movie. I think about it as the journalism movie.
I I definitely think that it would not be the movie it was if it didn't have the subject matter that it did, but I agree. I mean, the movie itself really focused on the investigative journalism that happened during the course of the story.
Right.
Which kind of leads us into talking about the title. So, Spotlight is the name of the investigative journalism unit. And the thing that I thought was really interesting is that the investigative journalism unit at the Boston Globe is actually the oldest continuously operating investigative journalism unit in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They also they operate like with complete secrecy surrounding the stories that they are working on. They have journalistic independence from the Globe itself. So I think that's really unique and important to have when you're an investigative journalist, because I think that, as we saw a number of times in this movie, that if you have too many outside influences, it can affect the stories that come out and the way that they are skewed.
Well, and I thought it was even cool that in one of the scenes, they had someone from the Metro section and they were like, you have to leave the room.
Yes.
And the guy was like, really? Yeah, you have to leave the room.
Yeah.
So our director was a gentleman named Tom McCarthy. And the thing that was super interesting for me was to realize that he also directed a movie I remember watching back when it came out, The Station Agent. Peter Dinklage is in it. I'm surprised you don't know about it.
Yeah.
It was a great movie. I haven't watched it since it first came out on gosh, I think it was probably DVD at that point in time.
I was going to say 2003.
But yeah. It was a great film, and I know that you like Peter Dinklage from his role in Game of Thrones, so you might actually look for it at some point.
Interesting.
And then I'm going to ask you, because I haven't watched it, have you watched 13 Reasons Why?
I have, yes.
So he
I watched the first 2 seasons.
He directed 2 episodes of it.
Oh. Wow.
And then he's got a few other things in his directing credits, but they're not stuff that I'm familiar with, so I didn't really go into them. He's got a total of 8 director credits. But he's also our writer, along with a guy named Josh Singer. So I'm going to click into Josh's information. And Josh looks like a puppy.
I was going to say, it's interesting that Tom has a ton of acting credits. And I mean, he still acts to this day, so.
So, Josh, the co-writer with Tom McCarthy, you're going to laugh. So the first thing that you know what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
So he wrote 2 episodes of Law and Order Special Victims Unit. So I didn't watch a ton of it, but I started The West Wing. He wrote quite a few episodes for The West Wing.
So I think we've talked about it before. My other half, literally he binges West Wing like twice a year. I'm not even kidding.
Oh my gosh, I love it, but I just can't pay for it all the time.
We have it. Of course. But I watched the first 3 episodes and I'm like, okay, does it get any better? Like it
Oh,
did not interest me. I'm sorry. Like I love political stuff, and I was just like, does it get any
okay.
better?
I have to ask you, so how close are your significant other and I in age? Because I think he's closer to my age.
Yeah, he's yeah, I think he's 5 or 6 years older than me. So yeah,
So it makes me wonder if it's not just a little bit of an age difference because
maybe.
it hooked me right away.
Yeah, it may be. And this is I literally tried to watch it like less than a year ago. And so, hotbed of political activity this time last year. And I just was like, I guess I've just seen too much. This just isn't interesting.
Well, I just recently have started listening to the news again because I'm trying to plug back in. And I admitted freely to my guy that after the insurrection, actually to a certain degree after the election, but definitely after the insurrection, I checked out. I was done. I was so tired of Donald Trump living rent free in my head for so long. I was done.
Okay, so what's interesting is this movie actually brought back memories that I can kind of relate to this, and I still have it now. Um, After September 11th, with this, which the Spotlight article was delayed because of September 11th.
Right.
After September 11th, you had just 24/7 coverage of the planes and the towers and everything for days and days and days. I mean, I literally I remember calling the other housewife whose husband was active duty at the time, and I was like, and it was like really early in the morning
Can we
because
really call her the other housewife anymore?
it was really early because it was East Coast time that everyone thinks of 9/11 happening on, so it was really early in Alaska. And I was like, are you watching TV? And she's like, no. And I was like, you need to turn on your TV. And she's like, what channel? I was like, literally any channel. QVC interrupted their coverage for 9/11. That's, and so watching, just everything surrounding 9/11, and then the wars happened. We went into Iraq, we went into Afghanistan, we had skirmishes in Pakistan, like all like 24/7, like just trauma porn basically, like all the time. And it was exhausting. Like people got numb to tragedy. And I kind of feel that way. In the past year, in the past couple of years, we've had the Me Too movement. We've had Black Lives Matter. We've had COVID. We've had Trump. We've had the insurrection. We had an election. Like, it's just exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. I get it. You have to check out of the news sometimes and just take a break.
Sorry, I just got startled by a text. I apologize. I apologize to everyone. I just got completely startled.
I was listening to a dog drink.
You were listening to Smalls, who now is checking out my laundry because I need to take a huge stash of things to the laundry tomorrow.
So yeah, you finally started watching the news again and re-engaging.
Well, and only on a very limited basis, but I'm trying.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to say one more thing about Josh Singer, and I mean he's got a fair amount of stuff that he's written. He has 11 writer credits. The other thing that I think I even tried to watch it a couple of times, and I think of it as being X-Files Light, is a show called Fringe.
I loved Fringe.
Of course you did.
I miss Fringe. I was just thinking about Fringe the other day. Yeah. Loved it. So yeah, he's got 8 writer credits for Fringe.
God, there's just so much on the list.
There is just so much. And having all of the streaming services is a really not helping. Um, yeah. I actually just started Clarice.
Oh, gosh, who was talking about that? Someone in our podcast network was talking about that. Was it Charlie?
It may have been. It's so good. It is so good. I love it. We're like 3 episodes in. And almost the entire series is available, right now. I think there's a couple more episodes to be aired, but by the time I get to that point, it will have caught up.
So I just don't think that there's anything that there's nothing that I'm dying to watch right now. And I think it's just because I'm tired.
I was going to say, you have other things going on.
My life is really insanely full.
There will be plenty of time later to catch up on all of the things, but you are doing things that you should be doing as you know.
Good Lord, I'm doing things I should have done when I was 20.
Yeah. Yeah. Live your life. And when you're old and gray and have broken hips, then you can sit down and watch TV.
It's like I told you. I mean, I tell my fine fella, I'm like, you know what? Time's wasting and nothing is promised.
Tick, tick, tick.
Yep.
Yeah. Agreed. So don't ever feel bad about missing out on any of the shows or movies or things like that. Listen to your podcast, listen to books on tape when you are commuting to and from your sweetie's house.
With cruise control.
And don't text and drive.
I let Siri do my texting for me.
Siri's like, I'm not saying that. That's dirty.
You're awful. Oh my God. No. Siri is a terrible transcriber.
I'll bet.
Like, there is legit stuff I will not say to Siri because I don't trust her to get it right.
The makers of the Urban Dictionary need to come out with a voice to text app.
Right, with a Siri plugin.
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, so our hero, thank you for humoring me, is Mitchell Garabedian. I hope I'm saying his Garabedian. You're right. No, I think you're right. I think it's Garabedian. So he is the attorney who was played by Stanley Tucci.
Right.
And
whom I love also.
Right. And I was like, who is that? I love that actor. Who is that? Who is that? And I looked it up tonight. And I was like, oh, it's Stanley Tucci. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Who's cooking and travel show on, I think it's CNN. It's kind of Anthony Bourdain-ish.
Really?
It's amazing. He's taking a food tour of Italy. It's amazing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yet one more thing I probably won't watch, which is tragic. But, I didn't watch enough of Anthony Bourdain's show when he was alive, so...
Right.
All right, so Mitchell Garabedian, I think you're right, I think it's Bedian, was born to Armenian parents, and he's actually the first kid in his family to go to college, which I resemble that remark, so I have a lot of respect for that. And he got his undergraduate degree at Boston University, got his law degree at the New England School of Law, and was
admitted to the bar the year I was born.
Oh my gosh. I was just going to say he was admitted to the bar in 1979. For some reason, I always think of you as a 1980s baby, but okay, 1979 it is.
Mid-December 1979, it still counts. I'm a 70s baby.
I will tell you off pod, but I recently became aware of another December baby that you and I should be aware of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Mitchell Garabedian, I fell in love with the character. Then it was really cool to realize that that there was so much accuracy in this movie, and I was really hoping that he wasn't a composite character, so I was happy when I looked at the Wikipedia entry for this movie tonight that, in fact, Mitchell Garabedian is a real person. He just... If Stanley Tucci portrayed him even half accurately, he seems like someone who has such a huge heart and who is very committed to what he does.
Yes.
And his work is really a tremendous amount of work with sexual assault survivors.
Yes. So he has a Twitter account. There's actually 2 Mitchell Garabedians on Twitter. He is at M.I. Garabedian. The other one is not in English, so I don't think that is him. But he started his Twitter account in 2016, but he does not tweet very often. He does, the most recent is last October. And then before that, it was last June, and that was him tweeting a Boston Globe article about allegations about a Catholic bishop. So he looks like he tweets a lot of Boston Globe articles.
Well,
which is both amazing and sad.
Right. And, you know, I was telling you, and I'll talk just very briefly in news, I was exhausted when I looked at the news for this. Not the movie so much as the subject matter. I was exhausted.
Yeah.
What I will say, some other stuff about Mitchell Garabedian is that he was involved in the Jerry Sandusky sex assault case.
Mm-hmm.
He was also involved in the Kevin Spacey case.
Yep.
And the Gagin, I hope I'm saying that right, case, and that was one of the priests that they talked about in this movie. He actually settled for 86 people in Boston in that particular case alone. The initial settlement was for $30 million to be paid out by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church dodged out on their obligation and ultimately reduced their payout to $10 million.
Pittance.
I'm not quite sure how they get to decide, oh, we're not paying $30 million, we're going to pay 10, but...
They have the resources to spend $10 million more making everyone else go broke to save themselves $10 million to only pay out $10 million.
You're absolutely right.
Yep.
You are absolutely
exactly
right.
How settlements work.
Yep.
That's why you get class actions. Yeah. Sad.
Very sad. I don't have anything else about him in particular.
I don't either. He kind of, I mean, as recently as 2017, you know, he was still involved in the he was involved in the Kevin Spacey molestation accusations. So I would imagine that he is still on the job to this day, and he is probably busier than ever.
I suspect that's, especially with Me Too, I suspect that's the case.
Yep.
He's pretty amazing.
He is. Not many out there like him.
Okay.
So does that take us into...
It takes us into Housewives Weekly, which is our news segment, and I'm just going to talk about a couple of things. And I mean, I literally searched like Catholic Church molestation news and
10 bazillion hits.
Right. And then even just over the past few days, I was like, this is exhausting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just 3 things from the news, just in the past few days. The Wisconsin State Attorney General Josh Kaul is investigating all 5 dioceses. I don't know that I said that quite right.
I think it's just diocese. I think the plural of diocese is diocese.
Okay. So he's investigating all 5 across the state of Wisconsin for child sexual abuse. There is an archbishop in Cologne, Germany, who has offered to resign because there are 75 credible cases of higher-ups in the church in Germany mishandling sex assault cases, sex abuse cases. And this is gross. The U.S. Roman Catholic bishops have announced that there were 4,434 sex abuse allegations against the church in the U.S. in the 2018-19 audit year alone.
Wow.
And that's just like a couple of days worth of news.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm typing. I'm typing because there was actually just something in I feel like it was more recent than 2018, but this is a Anchorage Daily News article from 2018 regarding the Alaska priest's abuse of boys was hidden for decades.
Yes, I saw that too, and I was like, I'm tired. I can't look at any more news about childhood sexual abuse.
Yeah, there was just something recently within the past year about like a settlement or basically the church owning up to the same sort of behavior of just quietly moving priests around after allegations.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, that has been the church's pattern all over the globe.
Right. Right. I mean, they literally just rotate them through. I mean, the movie starts out, just briefly in 1976. And of course, we heard more that they have known about it since the 60s and probably even before that. I mean, if you're hearing that they heard about it in the 50s and 60s, they've probably known since the turn of the century. And, I think it's kind of always been joked about that even before that. And they had a very good the psychologist or the psychotherapist had a very good point about the Catholic Church's celibacy and how that affects the secrecy and I just want to say the Satanic Temple, tenet number 3, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone.
It all goes back to the Satanic Temple. It does.
I'm just saying, I don't think I read that anywhere in any Bible except for TST's tenets. Yeah. Yeah.
So there has been a kerfuffle at work, and I think I told you about this, about some religious stuff and religious stuff from the other side of the world, side of religiosity, like someone pushing religious stuff in the workplace.
Ew.
And I was like, I could totally bring in some Satanic Temple literature, but I probably would not.
Isn't that funny that you're the one who doesn't feel comfortable pressing your beliefs on people?
Yeah, well, they would totally know who was bringing in the Satanic Temple literature.
The filthy tattooed nurse practitioner?
Right. Yes, absolutely. The filthy nurse practitioner who's covered in tattoos, who is going to get at least one more. And I've got, this is also off pod, plans for another that I'll tell you about.
Oh, they hurt when you get them there.
That is not where I'm talking about getting a tattoo, you filthy little thing.
Oh, Phil's gonna love that.
Oh, God. You're terrible.
I am, which is why everyone loves me so much. I'm terrible, so you don't have to be.
I'm pretty terrible. I've gotten more terrible.
I said you don't have to be. I didn't say you weren't.
Oh my God, we're laughing while we're podcasting this movie. I feel guilty.
No, again, heavy subject matter. Yeah, gotta interject a little air into it.
Um, I could go on and on and on in Weekly, but I would just encourage people that if they really want to depress themselves, they too can Google Catholic Church sex abuse scandal or molestation news or something like that.
I was gonna say just church and abuse. Like, you don't even want anything else in your search history. Like, yeah. Kind of in other news, this is probably Housewives Corner. I am 10 hours into Going Clear, the book on Audible. And wow, if you liked the movie Going Clear, and if you're crazy like me and you've watched all of the seasons of Leah Remini's show on Scientology, the book goes into so much more detail, and of course the book always does, about L. Ron Hubbard and David Miscavige and just all of the stuff that happened in the church and in L. Ron's life. And it's way worse than you think. He was terrible. He was terrible.
I remember being really taken by the book, so I'm so glad you're enjoying it.
One of the things that just keeps sticking out in my mind, there's several that, I won't get into, but like when he kidnapped his kids from his first wife and took them to Cuba, he told her, like word for word, he told her that he had killed them and chopped them up into little pieces and thrown them in the river.
I remember him talking about that. I remember them talking about that in the movie, didn't they?
I think so, but they went into graphic. He said that one of the last things he saw was her little arm floating away. Ugh! He was terrible. He's racist and sexist and homophobic and misogynistic, and it's just so much worse than you think.
I want to tell you something happy.
Okay.
I am reading a book that was recommended to me by my fella. It is a beautiful book called Accidental Saints.
I haven't heard this before.
I may have mentioned it to you, or I think I might have mentioned it because he sent me a story from it, I don't know, probably a week ago, maybe a little bit longer.
Okay. I was like, I've heard this recently.
It's written by a woman who is a pastor, I believe, for a Lutheran church. And it's really great. I started it a couple of nights ago, and the story that he sent me was basically about her officiating at a funeral for a gay man who had committed suicide.
Mm.
And what she had to say about his life and about his beauty was just devastatingly beautiful. So I was like, wow, that sounds like a really great book. So I actually bought the book and started it, and I felt really called out right away, but called out in a good way. So I can be super snarky and I can be really judgy, and sometimes it's hard to not be judgy when I'm working because I've seen so much human pathology over the last 30 years.
Right.
And it's hard not to be like, oh God, here we go again, with the person with diabetes who isn't getting their shit in a bag and managing their stuff. And, so it's really easy to be judgy. And then 9 times out of 10, I'll sit down with somebody and I'll be like, oh, that's the person's story.
Yes.
Or I'll feel like I have offered them something that nobody else has offered to them, and after being a jerk before I get in the room. And this pastor talks about God working through us even though we're assholes, basically. And I mean, I say God however you conceive of God. you know, I
Right.
mean, whatever spiritual system you come from. But I was like, damn, I feel called out, because there are times that I do feel like I'm able to do beautiful things, but it's not because I'm a good person. I'm an imperfect person, and there's something bigger working through me.
And I love that you that we watched In and of Itself, because
Mm-hmm.
it explains so much. We're all not just one thing, and so that patient isn't just a diabetic.
Right, right,
They're
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Because,
someone
nine times,
grieving, they're
yeah.
someone hurting. Yeah.
Nine times
So
out of 10, I get in there and somebody's got a much bigger story than what's on a piece of paper.
right, and I think having lived a life that was full of a lot of really heavy stuff. I think that's probably why I'm not so judgy, is because I understand that everybody has their story and everyone has their limitations and their own capacity, and it's not all the same. My
Well,
my capacity for taking things in is much different than yours or the next person's, and it may be greater and it may be lesser, but it's different.
and I will be honest, I get ashamed that I get so judgy, because then I do meet the human behind the piece of paper and I'm like, ah, I can't believe I thought what I thought.
Yeah.
So the book Accidental Saints, people, if you're looking for something, it doesn't make me feel bad. It's actually kind of a sense of beauty that there is something bigger than me, and that there is something that allows me to be a better person even when I'm a flawed human being, if that makes any
Right.
sense at all.
Yes,
Like I
it does.
did like I did a thing yesterday, and it felt so good. I wrote a letter for a patient who has been trying to get Medicaid coverage.
You told me about this.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
within hours, because of the letter that I wrote, this person got coverage and is potentially going to have a life-changing surgery. And I was like, "Damn, that's why I do what I do."
Yeah. And I mean, for anyone who's ever tried to get any sort of social service, getting it within hours
Is
is
unheard
unheard
of.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So that's amazing. And I would hope that one little thing that I do in a day could someday make such an impact on somebody's life that it would change their life for the better forever, for the rest of their lives. And you potentially did that for that person. They will have medical coverage, and they will be able to get the care that they need, that will make them live longer, and live without pain or illness or whatever their affliction was.
Well, and here's the truth. I mean, as a healthcare provider, you would hope that I would do something like that every day. The truth is, I don't. I don't have the
No.
opportunity to make differences like that very often. So when it happens, it's
Yeah.
a miracle.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying any of that to tout my own, to toot my own horn, to tout myself. It's just that, again, that recognition of there is something bigger than me. I'm doing what I'm doing for something greater than the paycheck,
Yeah.
you know? So,
Yep.
Accidental Saints, going clear if you want some more subject matter about Scientology. Accidental Saints if you want to feel better about the human condition.
I have a ton of Audible credits built up.
Well, I don't know if it's available as an audiobook. I suspect it is, and it is beautiful. Are you looking?
I am.
I don't have anything else for housekeeping. Do you?
I don't know. Who is the author of Accidental Scenes?
Oh, my
Because
goodness.
there are like three books.
I think her first name is Rachel.
Okay. So
Maybe
I'm
it's not Rachel.
seeing
Maybe
it.
it's Nadia. Oh my God.
Nadia
Nadia.
Bolz-Weber.
That's her. Yep.
Okay.
I don't
Yep.
know how I came up with Rachel, but it's Nadia.
So it gets 4.5 stars on Audible with 952 reviews.
It's a pretty amazing book.
Okay. I will have to check it out.
Very good.
Like I said, I have plenty of... Oh, and it's only 6 hours and 1 minute.
I will let my handsome guy know that I turned somebody else onto that amazing book. He'll be very happy.
It's only a third along as long as Scientology.
Well, there you go. And it's better for your spirit, so...
All right. Buy with 1 credit. Done.
Well done. All right. So that takes us to our summer, winter, and road construction.
All right. Since I am going first, I will start off. So I loved the whole story that they didn't just get a tip about a pedophilic priest and go with that story. They kept digging. They kept pulling that thread, and the whole thing just unraveled eventually. And it was through, a lot of hard work and determination and pushing back against the system that was actively working against him. We talked about the Mitchell Garabedian. The church was trying to get him disbarred for the work that he was doing.
Right.
At every
Which
turn,
tells me they were terrified.
Right? And at every turn, there was always somebody going, stop digging. Don't do this. You don't know what you're doing. Are you sure you want to do this? And they just kept going, and the story just grew and grew and grew. And I mean, other than investigative journalism, how would anyone have ever known that this was global and this was at least decades upon decades upon decades of policy and practice for the church? They, and who knows how, it's still going on, but who knows how long it would have flown under the radar. You said that, there's 3 was just within the last day or so. And, stories are going to keep coming out, but it's, otherwise those people wouldn't have come out with their stories. They needed the media backing. At one point in the story, one of the lawyers said, I did send this to you. I tried to get you involved.
McLeish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't do this on my own. I needed the backing of the press. Because, powerful forces like the church, like political figures, like movie studios have the power to keep things quiet for a very long time. They have the power, they have the money, they have the influence, and it really just takes, somebody saying, no, I'm going to look into this. And who has the pull and the motivation to do that but journalists? So I loved that, they kept going with the story, that they didn't just do the one story again, which we saw that they had kind of done that throughout the years. It was like, oh, this one priest. Oh, this one priest. Oh, this 20 priests. Oh, this 13 priests, thousands of victims, thousands. And that's just the ones who survived to tell their tale.
Right. Not the people who committed suicide or drank and drugged and...
Right.
Yeah.
Those are just the people that survived to tell their tale and who are willing to speak out.
Oh, that just gave me chills.
I know. So I'm so happy they didn't just run with the one story, and that they kept it. They played it so close to their chest and didn't let any of the other, newspapers get a hold of this to kind of out the story, because it would have totally dampened the flame. If somebody would have got a hold, it would have flared up for a few days, and it would have been like, oh no, like, this priest, blah blah blah. No one would have ever gotten to the cardinal. No one would have ever gotten to the whole story, and they did it, and I absolutely love it. And of course, that's what the movie was about. When I say this is a movie about the journalistic investigation, and not just about pedophilic priests, then yeah, that's why I chose it.
Well, it was. I'm happy that you chose it as much as I whined.
So that was my summer. What was yours?
So mine is somewhat related, and I feel like there were a lot of heroes in this story. Mm-hmm. Another hero, Marty Baron, who is the character who is played by Liev Schreiber.
Yes.
So he was the new editor for The Globe who pushed Spotlight to investigate this case, and who pushed and pushed and pushed. And it turned into not just investigating Father Gagum. It turned into, what was it, 72 priests or 78 priests by the end of by the time that they, 87, by the time that they published.
Yeah. The psychoanalyst or psychotherapist had said that that his feeling was that it's about 60% of all priests.
Who the heck was that? I recognize that voice. Now I'm going to click back into IMDb because I wanted to make sure that that's not part of my summer, winter, or road construction, but I totally recognize that voice.
I did too. And what's funny is it almost sounded like Liev Schreiber also. Or no, not Liev Schreiber. It almost sounded like Stanley Tucci also. Like he voiced it too. But I don't... I think the person's name was like Sibylle?
No,
something like that?
Sipe, maybe? Does that sound right?
That's what it was. Yeah, I don't see a credit for it.
I totally recognize that voice.
I did too, yeah.
Sorry, I'm completely, taking us off course.
Oh, yeah. No, it's okay.
So, I mean, mine was... I don't want to say that it was relatively small because I don't want to undersell the impact of that editor and the impact of that person as a person. But, yeah, it was Marty Baron.
And they pointed out in the story, it was actually, of course, Mitchell, Stanley Tucci's character, who pointed out that...
Richard Sipe! It was Richard Jenkins who played the dad in 6 Feet Under.
Oh! Yeah!
Yeah.
Okay.
He was not credited in the film, but he's got the IMDb credit if you go down through the very long list of cast.
Yeah, long list of cast.
So sorry.
It's okay.
But Richard Jenkins.
Yeah, Mitchell Garaginian
amazing actor.
Pointed out that that Marty was, the first Jewish editor of the Globe, and of course, he's not from Boston.
Right.
He's a single guy. He's never been married.
Right. Not a good Irish Catholic from Boston.
He was an outsider.
Yeah.
And it takes an outsider to sometimes take a look inward, to see it from the outside.
And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that was really one of the things that I thought about that character and that person is absolutely that. It takes someone who has a completely different perspective to say, we really should look into this thing. Yeah.
And, I thought it was funny that when they announced that, he was coming on, that everyone was afraid that their job was going to get cut and that he was going to make all these changes and things like that. And so everyone was just terrified that he was just going to come in and completely, shred things. And he came in and, he
didn't shred things. He actually made it
better.
He didn't make the reputation of the paper. That was already there, but he definitely enhanced the reputation of the paper.
Right. And their fears were entirely unfounded, and apparently his reputation, people had him wrong. And yeah, Amazing, amazing work. And I love Liv Schreiber.
I do too, and just so people know, so people remember, his half brother Pablo played Mad Sweeney in American Gods, and Pornstache in Orange Is the New Black.
That's right.
Yes.
Oh,
Mad Sweeney, for the ever loving joy of it.
Oh.
All right.
All right.
So, what was your winter?
I mean,
right. So,
right.
really, yeah, like, what was not winter about this movie?
Specifically, though, Father Paquin.
Oh, God, that was horrible.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of reading, so I'm going to let you say what you have to say about Father Paquin, and I may have something to add.
So, when Rachel McAdams' character, Sasha Pfeiffer, went to interview him, and he came to the door, and he was just completely nonchalant, like, oh yeah, like, I'll answer a few questions. And he's like, I fooled around, but I never felt gratified myself. Oh. I never got any pleasure from it. It's important for you to know that. I never raped them. There's a big difference. I should know I was raped. The way that he just said it nonchalantly, like it was no big deal, like it, I went through it, so of course, it's fine for other people to go through. I was so horrified.
So I will say that I did a little bit of reading, and apparently the real reporter said it didn't quite roll out that easily in one interview. It was a course of several interviews. But, I mean, he did admit to molesting children and apparently made the claim, and I'm not surprised that he was molested as well.
Yeah. Oh, that he even said that, I mean,
who knows? I don't know exactly how it rolled out because we've only got what we saw in the film. You may know more as you get further into the article that you're reading, because you're actually reading the Globe articles.
I am, yes. Which I don't know that I will go read all 600 articles that they posted in 2002, but yeah, I'm reading the original articles that Spotlight did that brought the abuse to light. So that was my bad, specifically in the movie, was just, and I can totally see that somebody would be like, well, yeah, but I didn't get any pleasure from it. Ugh. Need to pause the movie and go take a shower. All right, so what was your winter?
So mine was actually the casualness with which the stories were buried. Like Robbie, the character played by Michael Keaton, was like, yeah, I was working in the Metro and I was the person who buried that and I don't even remember it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the attitude was, well, we're good Irish Catholics from Boston, and good Irish Catholics from Boston take care of good other Irish Catholics.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's one thing, like, and it's not a good thing, but it's one thing to try and cover something up because you have an interest in it, like you're part of the church, or the church, like, is your biggest donor, or, but to do it just because it's not that big of a deal, or, because it would go against my side of things. I mean, that's one of the things that why I don't call myself a Democrat, is because, they're not the best, and I don't believe in everything that they do. And so whenever the Democrat does something terrible, I'll be like, yeah, like, kick them out of office. Like, I'm not going to make excuses for them because they're on my side, but there are people out there who will do that.
I think you have to hold people responsible regardless of what side you're on. I mean,
right.
I've made no secret of the fact that I have a friend who works for Andrew Cuomo, And I'm heartbroken that this friend is experiencing what he's experiencing with everything that's happening in New York right now. But I'm also like, just because Andrew Cuomo is a liberal lion doesn't mean we don't hold him responsible. We
Exactly.
should have held Donald Trump responsible, and we need to hold Andrew Cuomo responsible.
Right. And so, I mean, if someone in the Satanic Church did something terrible, I would be like, yes, they did something terrible. They need to be punished to the full extent of the law, or, the church, or whatever, thing they violated. So to just be so nonchalant about, well, yeah, we did a story about it in Metro, and, we didn't do a follow on it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, this is kind of related, and it's maybe a little bit of bycatch, but the fact that McLeish, that other attorney, was like, hey, I sent you 20 names 5 years ago, and you didn't follow up. Because they were really making that guy out to be a bad guy, and it turns out that he was trying to be a hero.
Right. And I do have to, for as bad as they made the lawyers who were behind the church and this, the whole, like, I can't discuss that. I can't discuss that. To me, that's a good lawyer. Like, like, they were contractually and fiscally obligated not to disclose, and, so, yeah. But yeah, I thought he was a bad guy, and then he's like, I gave that to you. I gave you 20 names 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you never did anything with them. You buried it in the Metro section.
Yeah.
So what was your road construction?
So...
And was it good, bad, both?
My road construction was very similar to your winter, so it was bad. And I specifically can point to when Marty met with the Cardinal Law.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cardinal thought that the city functions better when big institutions work together. And of course, Marty didn't think that way, but we all get the picture of what, the Cardinal was talking about like,
let's just pat each other on the back and keep walking.
Right. The money will keep flowing for the both of us if we just go along to get along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, there's not a whole lot that I hate as much as, as corruption, in no matter where it is, in politics, in the church. And
I think you and I are super, super similar. I always say I hate liars. I hate liars more than anything.
Yep. And I hate hypocrites,
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was my road construction, and it was bad. But of course, thankfully Marty was not going to go along to get along.
Right.
So, what was your road construction? Was it good or bad?
So mine was bad, not because it was bad in terms of the movie or bad in terms of production value, bad just in terms of the psychic damage. I actually found the numbers for the number of communities that were impacted. They listed all of those communities at the end of the movie that where pedophile priests had been uncovered.
Yes.
105 communities in the United States. That was as of 2002. 101 communities internationally, again, as of 2002. Now we're 18, 19 years later. I would love to see those numbers now. It's horrifying. It's definitely my road construction. Devastating.
Like, can we count that high?
Yeah, right?
I mean, and I feel like it's not just the Catholic Church. I think there's a lot of denominations that you will find this sort of thing. But the Catholic Church is just so large and so powerful. And I love one of the things that that Mitchell Garabedian said was the Catholic Church thinks in terms of centuries.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's so true. It is so true. They what is paying out $10 million to them in the grand scheme of global Catholicism? You know, over centuries. It's nothing. $10 million is nothing. 86 victims is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 296 priests are nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh.
Well, I think that takes us pretty solidly into our bycatch, which is interesting because I didn't write a lot of notes. I'm not sure how much else I have to say, but let's go for it and see what we've got.
So I have a ton of notes, but one, of course I do. One of the main reason why I picked this movie is the investigative journalism. So I just wanted to say a few things about that. Do you subscribe to any journalism that's behind a paywall?
I do. I subscribe to the Anchorage Daily News, and some of their stuff is behind a paywall, and I subscribe to the Washington Post, and some of their stuff is behind a paywall.
Okay.
And I also actually pay the Young Turks every month, even though I don't listen to them as faithfully as I used to.
Yes. Okay. So
yes. Why, yes, I do. Thank you very much.
Good. Very similar. I subscribe to New York Times? Yeah. No, is it the Post or the Times?
The Times.
It's the Washington Post
Times
and the New York Times.
Times is the liberal one in New York.
Yeah. So the Times, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. And now I subscribe to the Boston Globe.
Very good.
And I also subscribe to our local newspaper here in Juneau because we don't actually have a televised media in Juneau. We don't have a nightly news here. There's one that, deals with a lot of like Anchorage Fairbanks stuff, but not a whole lot of Juneau stuff except during legislative season. And that's what they cover. But they don't cover any really, hyper local news here. And so I just wanted to point out that it is very, very important for us to pay for our media, especially your local paper. So print journalism is mainly where televised and online media get their news from. They're the gumshoes who do the shoe leather reporting. They're the ones getting out on the street and getting the story. And then it is sold and syndicated to other news sources. But, the further you go away from the source, the less money the source gets. And so it's very important to support your local journalists. The headline coming out of a study that was made waves in journalism circles is that most news still comes from traditional media, primarily newspapers. Blogs and social media outlets examined provided little, if any, original reporting, the study by the Project for Excellence in Journalism found. According to the report by the Federal Communications Commission, the layoffs that gutted the newsrooms in recent years have resulted in stories not written and scandals not exposed, government waste not disclosed, health dangers not identified in time, local elections involving candidates about whom we know little. The report added, the independent watchdog function of the founding fathers envisioned for journalism, going so far as to call it a crucial for healthy democracy, and in some cases at risk. So it is crucial for democracy that we support independent investigative journalism. And so if you come up to your local paper or the New York Times or the Post or whatever you read online, if you come up to a paywall, I encourage you to subscribe. Right now, the Boston Globe is $1 for 6 months worth of reading.
Oh, is there any way you can post a link to Real Housewives?
So I will post a link to the Spotlight article for this movie. and it'll come up with the paywall. So it is $1 for the first 6 months, and then after that it is $6.23 weekly. But I encourage anyone to subscribe to whatever you read, whether it is conservative media or independent media.
Yeah,
or
because
liberal
people
media.
who listen to conservative media have made it this far in the podcast. Sorry.
No, but there are a few people out there who do try and listen to multiple sources. So I encourage you to pay for those sources. Don't try and get around paywalls too often with VPNs or private browsing or things like that. Don't open it in a different browser so you can get 6 more stories this month. Pay for media. It is very, very important. There is a publication called the Chicago Defender that announced last year, that they will be ending their print news source, their actual paper. They're going to be online only. But they began in 1905, and in Chicago, they did a lot of journalism that served communities and acted as defenders for rights and investigated systemic white supremacy in various systems, in the prison system, in the media, in politics, things like that. And they are almost solely responsible for getting a lot of Black leaders in the Chicago area elected to office because they got coverage. Their campaigns got out there because of the Chicago Defender. You and I are we both vote in our local elections, and we take the time to get to know our local candidates, but not a lot of people read the little flyer that the voting office mails you. A lot of people only get their information from print journalism, and they don't realize it. And so I absolutely encourage people to go subscribe to something. So, rant over.
Man, I don't have...
Very, very important.
I don't have nearly as cool a rant like that as you do.
So, I'm not... It's the article that is that the movie did is actually a 2-part article, and the thing is a novel. I am literally like maybe a quarter or a third the way through article 1 of 2. And so like I talked about, the movie did not focus on the actual scandal itself so much and the gory details. So I would encourage people to go out there and read the article, because I mean, not that anyone wants that in their head, but like I was saying about Scientology, it is so much worse. Like the movie didn't sanitize. That's the wrong word. But I mean, I feel like people don't come away with the gravity of what went on because the movie didn't focus on that. That was not the purpose of the movie. So I just wanted to read one little excerpt from what I have read so far in the article from the Boston Globe Spotlight. Now, as Gagin faced 2 criminal trials next week, details about his sexual compulsion are likely to be overshadowed by the question that many Catholics find even more troubling. Why did it take a succession of 3 cardinals and many bishops 34 years to place children out of his reach? Doesn't that just give you chills?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it goes on to talk about how in 1984 he had already been treated several times and hospitalized at least once for molesting boys. And in 1980, he was ordered out of St. Andrews in Jamaica Plain, which is in Boston, after casually admitting he molested 7 boys.
So gross.
This is what they were covering up. This was, you saw in the very, 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 very beginning of the movie in 1976. I had the closed caption on, so what was being whispered in that interrogation room by the I think it was the cardinal that was there, whispered to the mother was, we'll get him some help and he'll never, have access to children again and blah, blah, blah. Made all these promises. And how many times did he do that for how many priests? And how many other cardinals made those same promises to families? And they just kept doing it for decades.
So this is a little bit of a hard left, maybe not too bad. I was thinking about the fact that a lot of times we talk about documentaries and how this is a fictionalized account of what happened in Boston. But then I wrote, fictionalized accounts give us shorthand for understanding important stories.
Yep. It is the condensed version.
I think every now and then walking away from the documentary and looking at the movie, looking at the fictionalized version, looking at the condensed version, it just helps us understand our reality a little more quickly and a little better.
Right.
And then you can walk away and do the deep dives, like reading the Boston Globe articles.
Yeah. Agreed. That's a really good way of putting it. I thought it was interesting that the psychotherapist, was he a psychotherapist?
So I know that he had some sort of training. I don't know if he was a therapist, a psychiatrist, but Richard Sipe was his name.
He said that in 1985, the church deemed pedophile priests $1 billion liability.
1985. Wow.
Yeah, and $1 billion liability, and they settled 86 cases for $10 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's disgusting. I didn't even put those two numbers in my brain together. That's disgusting. And that was probably after 2002, after a lot of the stuff was published by the Globe. So we're talking 17 years later, and they bargained it down from $1 billion to $10 million.
Yeah. And I mean, that was the church's estimation in 1985.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They went from $1 billion in 1985 to $10 million in the early 2000s.
Yeah. And, the one lawyer, the one who we kind of thought was a bad guy.
McLeish.
I have to say
McLeish, yeah.
Yeah. The list of characters in this movie is exceptionally long, and the stars of it are not always close to the top. So, he said that these cases are very difficult because the statute of limitations is usually up, and the quote unquote charitable immunity standard is capped at $20,000. Charitable immunity standard? What is that?
Right.
Like, your pain and suffering and terror and trauma is only worth $20,000. Like, you can't even buy a car with that. Yeah. It's just,
Okay, I want to talk about another thing that's related.
Okay.
I liked and I think it was Richard Sipe, when he was talking about the culture of celibacy in the church and how it's
Mm-hmm.
actually not a thing, that most priests and nuns are sleeping with people, that celibacy is not a real thing.
Right.
But I liked what he said about it creating a culture of silence. So this belief that there's celibacy and that this belief that we have to like keep these secrets actually creates a situation where molestation can happen
Yes.
by creating
Absolutely.
this culture of silence.
Absolutely. And I think it also creates a culture of shame,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, and oppression and suppression of people's natural sexual tendencies and urges. And so whenever you do something like that, it has a way of an outlet has to be made somewhere. And I think it probably just adds to you know a negative outlet, rather than a priest naturally getting married to an adult. The secrecy that surrounds sexual activity. A, a child will keep my secret. A child from a broken home will keep my secret. Oh, and I thought it was interesting that he also pointed out that priests have a psychosexuality stunted at the level of a 12 or 13-year-old.
Oh, I missed that quote, but that makes total sense because when you think about when boys decide to enter the priesthood,
Mm-hmm.
lots of times that is the point at which that's the point in their lifespans where they make that decision. We don't even, I mean, I've said this again and again and again. We don't have the language in our 20s and 30s to talk about sexuality. I'm sorry, preteens don't have the language to talk about sexuality.
Right. Yeah. So I watched a documentary with a very unfortunate title at one point. And I'm sure it was a very deliberate title, but I don't think it's going to get a lot of traction because I don't think a lot of people want to watch a documentary called Are All Men Pedophiles?
That's a terrible title. So
So
tell me what's good about it.
it delved into why do men hypersexualize younger women? And of course, it all goes back to our Neanderthal days when younger women were fertile. We had a shorter lifespan. We died at like 30 or whatever. And so naturally, like, impregnating, a younger female is better for your offspring and all that, psychosexual babble. Um, but it also talks about how because men peak sexually earlier than women do, men have a tendency to peak in their teens and 20s, whereas women have a tendency to peak in their 40s and 50s.
Although modern chemistry has changed that.
Right. But what it does to your brain is that men, basically what they find attractive freezes during in that time. So, at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, men have a tendency to, want women who look like that, no matter how old they get.
Okay, I do want to be careful though because not all men.
Not all men. No,
I mean,
not all
some
men.
men really do understand and appreciate that as women learn their language and learn their own language, as women learn to ask for what they want and achieve some sexual agency. Some men really appreciate that and understand that an older woman is attractive.
Right. And this is also talking about kind of society at large.
Right.
Oh, over a vast array of cultures and education levels and religious tendencies and things like that. So I mean, it's just a broad generalization of kind of how the brain does work, and maybe this is why XYZ, you know? And so I kind of have a feeling that a priest with a psychosexuality stunted at a pre-teenage level is going to be attracted to preteen boys and girls. And so, I mean, it's definitely not an excuse, but my whole obsession with like true crime and serial crime in general, not just serial killers, but even like people who are serial shoplifters. Like, I don't get it. Like, what is not firing in their brain right that makes them do that and me not, And so that's kind of where I go with it is like, what causes that? And can we see it? Like, can we map that in the brain? Can we fix it? Can we prevent it? Can we see it on an MRI someday?
I was going to say, I don't know that we can fix it. I think there are things that we can do to prevent it, like protecting children from abuse.
Right.
Like teaching children to talk about healthy sexuality. Age appropriate, of course, but teaching kids to talk about sexuality. Yes, we can absolutely map it. Functional MRI, fMRI. We can totally map it. Yeah. I shouldn't say totally. We can map it to a certain degree.
Right. I hope that science does get better someday, and that, we can head off things at the pass. We can head off.
Dexter is heading something off at the pass right now.
It's finally actually dark because it's after 9:00 here.
It's not dark here yet.
So he is barking at something in the dark out there. Hopefully not a serial killer or a sexual predator.
Oh my God, laughing again.
But if he is protecting me from them, then
it's
awesome.
It's okay. It's a good thing.
Yeah. But it's usually just other dogs and the mailman. But yeah, so I'm just always so interested in the psychology and the physiology of what makes people tick, like what makes people do this instead of that, and why did I turn out the way that I turned out, and somebody maybe in similar circumstances turned out completely different.
I think of that a lot because the five of us had a really hard upbringing.
Right.
I mean, people do. People have terrible lives. We had a really hard upbringing. We had a lot of trauma. What made us different? What made you and I different from each other and from our siblings?
Right.
What gave us resiliency in some areas that other people don't have? I always ask that question. And I don't personalize it so much. I what makes one person resilient where another one is not?
And why are we so similar in so many ways?
Right.
Because you and I are at the opposite ends of, you are the oldest girl and I am the youngest girl. We are 10 years apart, and we are half siblings, so it's not all genetic. And we're crazy
similar.
And we are crazy similar. And how did it get that way? Because by the time I was really, self-aware,
I was gone.
You were gone.
Yeah.
And so you were like the.
And I wasn't gone. I was like gone. I mean, I disappeared for many years.
You were across the country. You were
not only that, but I disappeared and didn't come back.
Right.
Emotionally didn't come back.
Yeah. And of course, you and I were the first to. I was the first one to connect to you from the family.
Yes, you were. You absolutely were.
And
all this time later, you and our brother are the only ones who are.
Ah, yeah. But like, we grew up in similar but not the same circumstances, and we grew up a decade apart and not with each other. So how did we turn out so similar? And this goes back to the other show that we reviewed, Far From the Tree.
Mm-hmm.
And so, is it genetic? Is it nature? Like, yeah. I've taken us way off course with the priests freeze their psychosexual growth at 12, but Yeah,
I,
I found yeah, I always find it so interesting.
I want to take us back to one thing about the movie, and then I don't actually have anything else on my notes. Mark Ruffalo, hard love. Love that guy. I love him in everything that I've seen him in. You know, he's got this kind of innocence in just about every role he does that's just
Yeah.
adorable.
Yeah, his outburst at the end, like he made you feel his anger in that scene, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Thought he was going to Hulk out. But the secret is he's always angry. I love that the one reporter was like, "Yeah, I'm writing a book to give me something else to focus on." And she's
Yes.
like, "Oh, what kind of book?" And he's like, "A horror book."
Yes. Yeah. That
Yeah.
I really liked that character. That was a character that I had a hard time keeping track of and kind of having traction in my brain just because I'm not familiar with the actor.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, okay, you know, Robbie is Michael Keaton's character, and you know, Marty is Liev Schreiber's character, and you know, I had a hard time wrapping my brain around that character just because I don't know that actor, but he was great.
Yeah. So and I can't remember where I read it. I wish I would have screenshotted it, but he was a real life person. One of the team of
Was
four
it
on
Matt?
Spotlight.
Was Matt his name?
Yes,
Okay, that's what I
Brian
thought.
Darcy James.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so someplace I read, so we see his character find out that there is one of the quote unquote treatment centers for these priests on his block, and he gets really freaked out about it. And so in the movie, we see him write a note to his kids and put it on the refrigerator that
Right.
says, "Don't go near this house." And
Right.
there's a picture of the house. He like goes and gets a picture of the house.
Oh, he's in the Hawkeye movie, the actor.
Oh,
Or not
huh.
Hawkeye movie, the Hawkeye series that's coming out on Disney Plus.
Um, so they were hesitant to put that in the movie because he actually did that, and they thought that it was going to be something that people saw as unrealistic. But according to something that I read, the actual reporter did find out that there is one of these treatment centers on his block and put a picture and a note to his kids on the refrigerator. Could you imagine? And he went through it where he wanted to come out. He wanted to tell his neighbors because there's, you know, his neighbors have kids, and having to keep that kind of a secret, you know, that then, you know, at the end we see him putting one of the Boston Globes on that porch.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a very underrated character.
Well, anything else?
I have a ton more, but no, I think we covered a lot of ground. I just want to say that it was a little jarring to see 9/11 again.
Right.
I it's one of those moments in your life, if you were alive and self-aware at that time, you'll always know exactly where you were and what you were doing, and we kind of, it tends to fade in our memories, but to see the reaction of people afterwards, not just see the footage itself, but see how people were reacting at the time, it was a little jarring in a movie that was already jarring.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think that's all that I have. So hopefully we will podcast some lighter fare next time. But
Yes, I'm not sure what, but
I definitely encourage people to, if you have not watched it and you've listened to this podcast, go watch Spotlight on
yeah,
Netflix.
it was good.
And
Yeah, that's right. It's on Netflix. So if you've got an account,
subscribe to print journalism.
mm-hmm.
Our democracy depends on it.
Yes, democracy dies in darkness. Washington Post.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else, so you girls watch out for those weirdos.
We are the weirdos, mister.
We are. Have a good week, everybody.
Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.